Hello and welcome back to the Wandering Cantos. Today we're going to be taking a look at Chainsaw Man, and we're going to be specifically looking at Chapter 1, Dog and Chainsaw. So this is going to be the start of another series in our literary study. So the purpose of this video, and basically this whole series as a whole, is to treat this manga the same way you would treat a literary classic in a high school or college English class. So basically that means we're going to take a look at the plot of each chapter, do a little character analysis, and then study things like character psychology and theme. So if you like this type of content, if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, I like to start with a brief spoiler warning. So this episode will feature spoilers for Chapter 1 of the first volume of Chainsaw Man, but we won't be spoiling anything major from the future volumes or chapters. I feel like the chapters in Chainsaw Man are actually pretty dense compared to other mangas, or at least the other ones we've been looking at so far. So there's actually a lot to unpack. So in future episodes, we may look at more than just one chapter at a time, but for now, I think this will be the best system. So, Chapter 1. Let's get into the plot summary. So, Chapter 1 begins with Denji doing some intermediate arithmetic to calculate his income, his ongoing debt, and his budget for expenses. In regards to his characterization, I sure hope that we don't later learn that he hasn't gone to school, because this would low-key be a major contradiction to that, in the opening page no less. But anyway, through this we learn that he is in massive debt and that he's been doing several odd jobs to try to pay it off, including selling some of his body parts. The best way to make money in this world, however, is devil hunting. So Denji goes on a mission to slay the tomato devil, he succeeds, and he receives a reward of 400,000 yen. However, after a series of fees and bills, he's left with only 1,700 yen. And it's clear that he's being manipulated by the people he owes money to, but since they hold the power in the situation, there isn't much he can do. So this basically leaves him so impoverished that he can only eat a single slice of bread for the entire day. We then learn that Denji's debt is actually his father's debt, and that the debt is owed to the Yakuza. We also learn that he has a pet devil, and that he uses this pet devil to kill other devils. We then get a flashback which shows how Denji and the Chainsaw Devil met. So, right after Denji's father was buried, the Yakuza forced Denji into taking on his father's debt. While Denji stood by his father's grave, he saw a small chainsaw devil. At first, Denji defied the devil and basically told it to kill him since he was, already as good as dead. But once he saw that the devil was hurt, he made a contract with it, basically saying, "I'll save you, so you save me." After this flashback, we return to an older, weary Denji. He tries to sleep, but he begins to cough up blood, and he reveals that his mother had a heart condition, and therefore it's likely that he has it too. So the Yakuza then arrive at Denji's little shack and announce that they have another job for him. They drive to this creepy, abandoned warehouse and enter it in search of a devil. The lead debt collector thanks Denji for being as obedient as a dog, but then tells Denji that he can't stand dogs. Another Yakuza member then sneaks up behind Denji and attacks him. It's revealed that the Yakuza tried to make a deal with the devil just like Denji did, but that they foolishly made it with the zombie devil, who then turned all of them into zombies. The zombie devil hates devil hunters and therefore commands his mob of zombies to attack Denji. So Denji is then completely removed from the Minecraft server, which I'm saying both for practical purposes and to be a little ironic. But anyway, he's placed in a dumpster afterwards. Pochita, which is the chainsaw devil, lies in the dumpster as well and remembers a conversation he had with Denji. Denji predicted the likelihood of his eventual demise and told Pochita that if he ever died on the job, he would want Pochita to take over his body. Instead of doing this, however, Pochita gives Denji his heart in exchange for Denji showing Pochita his dreams. So Denji is then healed of all of his wounds, including the wounds he had from selling off body parts, and he wakes up surrounded by the zombies. He reflects on how the Yakuza had more than enough but couldn't help but want more, and thus made this, contract with the zombie devil. Similarly, Denji feels that he should have been satisfied with just having Pochita, but also wanted more. As the zombies attack, Denji defends himself and ultimately tips the scales of battle. As he does so, he realizes that this battle is technically voiding his debt, since all of the zombies are the people he owed money to. After this battle, a woman and some men in suits arrive at the warehouse. They imply that they came here to deal with the zombies and are surprised to find that someone else has already beaten them. They spy Denji, and the woman is able to tell that he is a human, despite the fact that he still looks all chainsaw-like. So Denji asks her to hold him, and she hugs him tightly. The woman introduces herself as a public safety devil hunter and gives him an ultimatum: be killed as a devil or be kept by her as a human. She tells Denji that she'll give him food if he becomes her pet. Denji remarks that this is a dream come true. So that concludes the first chapter. So let's jump into some analysis. So chapter 1 serves several purposes. It introduces us to Denji, it introduces us to the world and the world building that Denji inhabits. It introduces us to the backstory and context which will determine Denji's future choices. It introduces us to how Denji got his powers, and it introduces us to the public safety devil hunters. So something I wanted to discuss about chapter 1 is sort of this concept of pets and dogs. So there's an interesting cyclical nature to chapter 1. In the beginning, Denji is treated like a dog by the Yakuza and is expected to be reliant, obedient, and to do what he is told for rewards. Mere moments after he escapes this dynamic and this relationship by killing all the zombies, he is forced into another pet relationship, although he is more accepting of this one since it's coming from a woman who is also offering him food. The woman and the Yakuza boss both threaten Denji with death if he turned them down, but Denji has a drastically different attitude towards the woman. So basically, we'll have to continue reading to see if things work out better for Denji in this situation, but it's pretty much the same situation, just with very small differences in that he's being treated slightly better. In addition to Denji's relationship with the Yakuza and the Public Safety Division, there's also the pet-owner relationship between Pochita and Denji. Denji treats Pochita like a pet and a friend, but in a much more loving way than the Public Safety Division and the Yakuza treat him as a pet. However, it is notable that Denji also forced Pochita into a similar situation and sort of a similar dynamic. Denji offered a blood contract with Pochita. If Pochita had turned down this contract, Pochita would have died, and Denji knew this. In return for the blood, which is a life-sustaining substance similar to food for devils, Pochita has to work as Denji's devil-killing device. So, Pochita loves Denji, but is Denji the best owner, quote-unquote, for Pochita? Similarly, will this woman treat Denji as Denji treated Pochita? And if she does, is that a good thing? Because really, we just saw that Denji offered Pochita sort of like friendship, a bit of shelter, and food, which seems to be pretty much exactly the same thing that the woman is offering Denji. And then I wanted to just take a moment to do sort of a character study on just Denji, so far. So far, Denji is both straightforward and complex depending on how you look at him. He has been defined by and sort of trapped by his debt and life situation, which has made him appear to be consistent. His debt collectors believe that he's obedient and reliant, but we also get snippets where we see the opposite. So, for example, he tricks the Yakuza into thinking he ate the cigarette for money, but he spits it out when they leave, thus revealing that he has more cunning and self-worth than people think. They think he just swallowed it and was happy to do it, but, clearly there's a different side to him that he doesn't show other people. But with that being said, that's going to wrap up sort of this rapid fire look at chapter 1. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, and don't forget to subscribe, so you'll be notified when the episode on chapter 2 comes out. So one of my favorite things about running this channel is sort of having some discussion about, the material in the comments. I always want someone to talk to about these different mangas and series. So I'd love to, have the opportunity to discuss it with you in the comments. So some sort of questions to prompt some discussion is, do you think that things are going to get better for Denji, especially in relation to the whole sort of pet relationship and dynamic I was talking about earlier? And what do you think it ultimately means that Denji is still human even though he has a devil heart? What makes someone human? How do we define that? Especially since we saw that Pochita as a devil was able, and even kind of the zombie devil, was able to talk, they're sentient, they're able to think, they have feelings, they experience fear, they can do things like self-sacrifice out of love. So, what really makes something a devil and what makes it a human? And if Pochita is a devil, why do you think he was so benevolent to Denji, since all other devils seem to be super against humans? So I'd be curious to hear what you think. I do ask that you try not to spoil any material beyond chapter 1, so this is more about theorizing rather than spoiling something much later in the series. But I'd love to hear what you think. But with that being said, I'm going to wrap this one up, so take care, and I will see you in the next one.